Hi everyone, it's me, Spring, the fiber enthusiast, and welcome to the channel. So upon request from the knitted color work, stranded knitting video that I had done, I was asked if I would do the hat, the beanie that I was showing how to do stranded color work with and explaining. I was using as a demo. I was asked if I would do a video on that beanie and how to work that beanie up. So here we go. You're gonna need a pair of scissors. You're gonna need a darning needle. You're also gonna need a stitch marker, so to mark the beginning and end of your round. And when we get to the decreasing section, it would be helpful to have a stitch marker for every 10 stitches you have cast on. That way it makes it easier to do your decreases. Now, when you get to the decreasing part at a certain point, you're going to want to either be working on magic loop or DPNs. So if you don't start off with DPNs, that's okay. You can switch to them as you get to a certain point. Perfectly okay. A tape measure would be helpful, usually because I measure the distance of the brim, not necessarily the amount of rounds. I kind of gauge it by the size. So I try to do like roughly 1.5 to 2 inches for the brim of the beanie before I begin working the body of the beanie. And then I, again, will measure to see what the height is from the bottom of the beanie to the point where I start decreasing for the crown. Another thing that you might need is a pen, just to kind of tick off where you might be, what round you're on. So for instance, it should get easy once you get started. I'm gonna move that out of the way. Your needle size, that should be determined by the weight of yarn you're using. I'm using a worsted weight, and I believe I decided to go with, yes, a 6mm knitting needle. Just personal preference, that's all. So for instance, we will be doing just like I showed in that video, and I will link it in a card in the upper right-hand corner, but we will do 5 with a main color and 5 with a contrasting color. So however you decide to do this. Now for me personally, I'm going to do, my main color is this older vintage red heart, and it is just eggshell. It's not like pure white. It's an off-white. It's an eggshell. But I have it sitting on the shelf. I figured we are in the spring cleaning of emptying these shelves. And I also had this red heart, which I believe was like fruit stripes or neon stripes or something like that. I cannot remember. But at any rate, I had this left over sitting on the shelf waiting for a project. So I'm going to use this as my contrasting color. Now, if you are looking at using something that is variegated or self-striping or multicolored, I want to give you an example. So if I was to use these two to create a beanie, and we're not looking at weight of yarn at this point, we're looking at colors. We would not be able to use this one unless you bypass and omitted this white, because you're going to lose your pattern when it comes to the white section. So therefore, when you're choosing your main color and your contrasting color, you want to make sure that your main color is not in your contrasting color way at all. and that way you don't lose your pattern when those collide and you get the same color, or otherwise you're just going to completely miss out on a section. It'll all be one color. So at any rate, you know, you can just tick off this. I printed out, I just got on Stitch Fiddle and pulled up a graph and just worked a graph of 5 stitches by 5 stitches and worked it in the round. So a total of 10 stitches per color, or per color change, or pattern change, should I say. So we have 5 in the main color and 5 in the contrasting color. Hopefully that all makes sense. It will once we get into the color. So I'm going to do a long tail cast on, and I'm going to cast on for an adult, which would be 80 stitches for me. Now, you, using your tension, your size needles, your size yarn, it might be different. But I know a standard hat beanie for me is 80 stitches. Once I have 80 stitches, I will return and we will join in the round and begin a 1-by-1 ribbing stitch. All right, once you have your 80 stitches, you're going to want to make sure that all your stitches are facing the same direction. Now, I generally join in the round a little differently, but for this particular situation, I'm just going to make sure that my working yarn and my tail is on my right-hand side. And where I started is on my left-hand side. So we're just going to start joining in the round automatically. And I'm going to slip my stitch down to the bottom with my stitch marker. Now I'm going to knit my first stitch and purl my second stitch. So this is your repeat all the way around for as many rounds as you need for your brim. We're going to zoom in close and take a look at that one more time. So I'm taking my right needle and I'm coming to the left side of my next stitch. I'm going into the stitch like such, coming out the back. I'm bringing the yarn over the top, popping it back through that stitch, and now popping the old stitch off. Now to purl, I'm bringing the yarn to the front, inserting my needle from right to left, bringing the yarn up and over counterclockwise, and popping that loop I made back through the stitch and dropping that old stitch off. And you will continue to knit one and purl one all the way around for as many rounds as you choose for your ribbing. As I said previously, I like at least 1.5 inches to 2 inches of ribbing for my knitted beanies. So I'm going to go ahead and continue on that, and I will be back when it's time to start adding in our contrasting color. All right, so I just slipped this into my next stitch, and all I did was act as if I was knitting it just to hold the stitch marker on, just so that way you know where I'm at here. But so if I take the measuring tape and go from my needle down, we are at basically right about 2 inches. So here we are. If I go from the bottom of the needle, it's almost 1 3/4 inches. So that gives you an idea as to how I do my brim. Now you can go through and count 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's see here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 rounds is what I ended up doing with the worsted weight. So just to give you an idea as to how I do it, I measure, and whatever it ends up being, how many ever rounds it ends up being, I try to make it roughly 1.5 inches to 2 inches for the brim. Now I'm going to pull my chart over here, and this is, if you wanted to use a piece of graph paper and fill in, you totally could. You absolutely could. And what you would do is leave the first 5 boxes white and then color in the next 5. And repeat. And you would continue to repeat that for how many ever stitches you're using, preferably in multiples of 10 for it all to line up. And then your next row, your very next row, you're going to start with 1. And let me zoom in on this a little bit better. So right here we have, forget the numbers underneath. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 main color, and 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 contrasting. And then it just repeats. That's your repeat. So now we move up to the next round and we start, the first stitch is the contrasting color. What you're doing is it's the completion of the round. Then you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in main color, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in contrasting. And as you see, it is offset by 1 here and by 1 here. And that's how you'll be able to know when you come to the first color stitch on your second row, your first contrasting color stitch, you know that you need to do that with a main color. Then you go all the way down your contrasting color for 4 stitches, and then you come back into your main color and you need to do 1 in the contrasting color. So you have 5 total contrasting stitches, and it's just offset by 1. So here we have this row, and then if we jump up to the next row, row 3, it would be 2, because you only had 1 here, so now you have 2 contrasting, and then 5 main color, and that brings you over the top of your contrasting color stitch from below, the very first one, and then you continue for 5 stitches, which drops you off on to your main color, your very first stitch of the main color from the round prior. Hopefully that kind of maybe makes sense, and you can follow along as I'm showing you here. So let's go ahead and get started. We're going to start off with 5 in our main color. So I already have my main color, and I'm going to knit 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Now I'm going to bring in my contrasting color and knit 5 in the contrasting color. So I'm going to go in as if to knit into my next stitch, grab my contrasting color and pull it through. Now I'm going to hold that tail off to the side so I can knit the next 4 stitches. So that's 2, 3, 4, and a total of 5 stitches. All right, so now as we showed in the video that goes over how to do stranded color work, I'm going to stretch those stitches out. That way they are already stretched out and my float back here will not bunch up, pull together, and pucker up my fabric when I knit the next 5 main color stitches. So there we have a nice float with lots of give room. Otherwise, if it puckers up, you're not going to be able to get it on the head that it's supposed to go on. So there's 2, 3, 4, and 5. And then we're going to repeat the contrast. Going to drop the main color. If you're only doing one in your hand at a time, that's perfectly okay. And now we're going to stretch these stitches out so we don't have too tight of a float, and knit the next 5 in the contrasting color. And you're just going to repeat this all the way around to the end. It's 2, 3, 4, and 5. Repeating 5 main color, 5 contrasting, and ensure that you are doing this. Make sure to mind your tension and get your floats with plenty of space so that way the fabric can stretch out like it's intended to do. All right, go ahead and continue that around, and I'll meet back up with you and show you how to start your next round. All right, so here we are. We have completed the round, and now we need to start round 2. Round 2 begins with 1 contrasting color and then starts the pattern repeat. So we're going to knit this first stitch with the contrasting color, then knit the next 5 with the main color. So let me get that ready to go here. So here's 1, 2, 3, and 4. And you'll notice the next one is going to be knitting on a contrasting color. So that will give you the offset that you need. Now we'll pick up the contrasting color and knit 5 in the contrasting color and begin those repeats. So 5 in the contrasting color. 1, 2, 3, 4, and now you see we hit the first main color from the round prior, and now 5 contrasting stitches. And then you just pick up your main color and you'll knit 5 in the main color. Once again, that's going to be these 4 main color stitches and 1 into your next section of stitches of color. So it would be these 4 main color and that one of the contrasting color. Do that real quick together. Main color for 5. And then you jump back to your contrasting color. I'll meet up with you at the end of the round and I'll show you how to do the next round. All right, so I'm coming up to the end of the second round and I want to show you why we jumped over here to start the next round. So to end this round, we only have 4 contrasting stitches. That's because we started with 1. So that creates the 5 total. So I'm going to finish this round with the last 4 contrasting color stitches here. There we go. All right, so now I'm going to slip the stitch marker. And now we need, because there's 1 contrasting stitch here, we need 2 for round 3. So we're going to do 1. And what I'm going to do is take and tack this white down like such. And just capturing it in behind this stitch. like that. Popping that off. And now I have my first 2 stitches are contrasting. And now we're going to start our repeat. It will be 5 main color and then 5 contrasting. So 5 main color. Next, 1, 2, 3, 4, and you'll notice we're going to get into that contrasting color, the first one. Pop that off. Now we have 4 contrasting colors. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then we need to work 1 contrasting color on that main color stitch to create the 5 that we need for the repeat. So now we need contrasting color. 1, 2, 3, 4, and now 5. And then you'll just simply repeat all the way around. All right, for the next round, we need to have 3 contrasting colors because there's 2 here, so we need to pick up the 3rd one. So we're going to do 1, 2, and I want to tack this white down, and 3. Now I explained tacking and floats and all of that. Once again, I explain all of that in the video that I suggested earlier in this video, and I will put it also at the end down in the description box so that way you can reference it. All right, so we have 3 now contrasting colors, 4 main colors, and then we start back into our contrasting colors of 5. So now we need to shift everything by 1. So now we're going to start in the main color for 5 stitches. It's 2, 3, 4, and here's the shift. We're picking up this contrasting color, the first one of the next 5 stitches, and turning it into a main color. Now we'll drop the main color and do 5 contrasting stitches. And again, that is your repeat all the way around. Until we get to the end, we will be making 5 contrasting and 5 main color. Just like that. And you can already start to see the diagonal in that pattern. All right, go ahead and continue all the way around. And I'm going to work through until we get all the way over and back started into the white. Just so that way you get a rhythm going. All right, so we've come to the end of round 4 and we're now on round 5. We will have 1, 2, 3, 4 contrasting stitches before we begin our repeat. So we're going to start sliding our stitches and getting set up to begin our 1, 2, 3, and here we are on the white. We're going to pick up our 4th contrasting stitch. Then you begin your repeat. 5 main color, 5 contrasting color. Just like this, 1, 2, 3, 4, and here we are 5. And once again, we switch over to our contrasting color for 5 stitches. All right. So that is your repeat around now. We are on 5 and 5. I'll meet up with you at the end of the round and we will do the next round together. All right, next round we are looking at 4 contrasting colors. So we need to have 5. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and the first one from your main colors will all be done in the contrasting color. So we're gonna knit over 5 in the contrasting color and begin our repeat. Now you will do 5 in the main color, continuing to shift by 1 stitch every time. And next you will do 5 in the contrasting color. Once again, shifting over by 1. And you're just going to repeat that all the way around. When you come to the end, you should end with 5 of your main color stitches to end this round. All right, so here we are. Now we're going to start again, but this time it'll be the main color would be 1 instead of the contrasting color as 1. But you're repeating the same thing over and over and over again. All we're doing is just shifting as we go each round. And we're shifting it by 1 stitch, so that way it goes on the diagonal, just like the graph here. And you're going to continue doing that until the body of your hat is to the height you desire. Now, generally speaking, if I'm looking at, you know, my beanie here, and I want to start decreasing. Let me zoom back out for you here. So I'm looking at my beanie here, and maybe I want to start decreasing somewhere about the height of 6 inches. So a total of 6 inches from the bottom of the beanie to the point that I actually drop my contrasting color and start decreasing. You can go more or less. That is up to you. I may go 8 inches and give more height to the body of it. So maybe 6 inches of body instead of 4 inches of body. And that's what I mean by body is just from the brim up. So that kind of gives you an idea as to how many rounds you're going to continue to go. You just continue to go around and around until the height of it is to the desired height. As I said, 4 inches to 6 inches for the design part of it before we start decreasing for the crown is absolutely sufficient. And you make the judge of that on your own as to how high you want it to be for the body before you start decreasing for that crown. All right, I'm going to continue working on this in the round, and I'm going to go for a little while. I may end up with 6 inches, and I may end up with 8 inches from the bottom of the beanie to the point where I start decreasing. But I will bring you back around and we will add in those stitch markers and start our decrease rounds. We will drop the contrasting color at that point. All right, so I've actually gone as far as I want to go with this particular beanie, and I cut away from my contrasting color, grabbed some stitch markers and some flex DPNs, and I ended up going 6 inches total from top to bottom. So right here at the edge of my brim, all the way to the top here is 6 inches. And that's just what I did. You can do it more depending on your tension and the yarn you're using, the size needles you're using. You can do how much ever more you want to do, or maybe you did less. Well, that's up to you. So I cut away from my contrasting color. And what I'm going to do now is knit over 10 stitches in the main color and add a stitch marker. And I'm going to do that all the way around for the first round of your crown. So we kind of just get things set up. And like I said, I'm just going to knit 10 stitches and then place a stitch marker. And do that all the way around until I have it marked all the way around. All right, once you have knitted a full round and placed all of your stitch markers for one every 10 stitches, we're gonna do a round of decreasing and a round of knit. And then you'll basically be repeating the same scenario a few times, except the amount of numbers in the decreasing round will be decreasing because we're knitting 2 together in order to decrease. So if you want to take a screenshot, you can kind of see it here, how I have it laid out. We start off with knit 8, knit 2 together. Then we knit all stitches. Then we knit 7, knit 2 together. Then we knit all stitches. And we continue that until we get down to knit 5, knit 2 together. Then we knit a round of all stitches. At that point, we're going to knit 4, knit 2 together for one round, knit 3, knit 2 together for another round, and we're going to continue to decrease. Then we're going to cut away from our main color, and we're going to put our needle on the end of it and slip as if to knit all stitches. Then you're going to cinch it closed and sew in your ends. Now, as far as when you need to switch over to DPNs, or if you're doing magic loop, you should be fine. That's all going to depend on you and how many stitches you're comfortable moving on to your decreasing rounds, moving on your needles that you're currently using. So if it starts getting too tight and it starts putting a lot of stress on my needles and cable, I will then switch over and try to evenly space my stitches out over 2 of these DPNs, and then use the third one to, constantly be changing and knitting. So that's how I do that. But just a quick, we're going to go through this first one together here. So scoot all my stitches. So we're going to knit 8. So it's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Now you notice you have 2 stitches before your stitch marker, and now you just knit those 2 together. Slip your stitch marker as you come to it. And you just repeat that all the way around for this round. The next round, you're going to knit the whole round. Now I will put this particular setup down in the description box, so that way if you aren't able to or didn't take a screenshot, you can write them down for yourself, however you so wish. Now, when I get down somewhere around, I don't know, probably 5 stitches, maybe 6 stitches between each stitch marker. That's when I change over to my DPNs. Now, again, that's completely up to you as to how much you need to allow for ease to work on DPNs. All right, so I hope that each and every one of you are enjoying this tutorial. So it's really simple and easy. It's just shifting over by 1 stitch every round. And that causes that diagonal effect in your color work. So just 1 stitch every single round you shift over. And that's pretty much it as far as working this particular beanie. I'm going to go ahead and continue to do my decreases, and as I said, they will be down in the description box. All right, everyone, so that is it for me. I'll show you it when it's finished. Be blessed, be a blessing, and until next time, bye for now.